Good evening, everyone. We welcome you all to another one of our amazing session under lecture leadership series. We have with us today Miss Lavanya Chari, the Global Head of Investments and Wealth Solutions, HSBC Private Banking and Wealth Management. She has been a Global Head of Investments and Wealth Solutions for Private Banking and Global Management at HSBC. She is responsible for driving the global private banking and wealth management and leads the global investment products team serving the needs of private banking clients and personal banking customers. Lavanya is a member of the HSBC Private Banking Executive Committee as well. She joined HSBC in 2000 and she joined it from Deutsche Bank, and from there she started as a managing director and ran the products and solutions globally for wealth management. With responsibility across capital markets, fund solutions, and wealth planning. Prior to that, she was part of structuring for Asia. Lavanya's previous roles at Deutsche Bank included running the commodities, asset structuring businesses globally, and the rate structuring businesses for institutions and private banking across Europe. She spent the first 9 years of her career in London before moving to Singapore in 2011. Lavanya has a BA in aerospace engineering from the Indian Institute of Technology, IIT Madras, and she has an MBA from IIM Bangalore. Thank you all for joining this session. We hope it's a delight for you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. It is wonderful to be here. And as I walked into the campus today, I was assailed by a raft of memories of the hostel, of the classrooms, of the late night sessions at Gajendra Circle. Went to the aerospace department where I had lots of classes. And of course, the campus has changed tremendously since I studied here. And I have to say that despite all of that, I have a lot of very fond memories of IIT. And I saw the Heritage Center, and I heard that Sarang concluded recently. And again, lots of great memories from Sarang as well. A couple of months ago, I met Kaviraj in Singapore. And when he asked me if I was interested in speaking to the students, I said an immediate yes, as I would love to share my experiences and stories with all of you, and I do hope that you benefit from those. And when I was asked what I wanted the title of the talk to be, I gave it some thought and decided that I wanted to speak about two values that I hold really dear to my heart: resilience and empathy. So let me tell you my story and how these values have helped me grow both personally and professionally in my career. And once I do that, I'd love for this to be interactive, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. So I grew up in Chennai. I, in fact, went to school in Kendra Vidyalaya in IIT. My sister and I went to school right here. So we were just discussing as we came onto the campus that it was pretty much 16 years on campus for me. My parents are here today, along with my daughters, Navya and Sanya, who are 10 and 8. And as you know, I studied aerospace engineering here. And one of the things I hold very close to my heart are the friendships that I developed here in IIT. In fact, last month, we went on holiday to Fiji with my best friend, Vidya Srinivasan, who was my roommate in my first year in IIT. And I just went to Saryu and took a picture to send to her. And she's currently in Google in California. And I'm really proud of the fact that she was awarded one of the Distinguished Alumni Awards this year. And many of the children of my close friends in IIT are now friends with my children. We spend time together and go on holidays together. So after IIT, I had an admission from Stanford to do a master's in aerospace engineering. But unlike some of my classmates, I wasn't passionate about it. So I decided not to pursue that and went on to do my MBA in IIM Bangalore. And in my first year, I interned with Lehman Brothers in Tokyo for 2 months, which was an interesting experience because I decided to explore the country every single weekend without speaking a word of Japanese, which I must say was very challenging. And I felt that I could transfer my maths and engineering skills into the world of banking, particularly in the structured product space. And I did feel that it was a natural fit for me. And that's when I made the decision to pursue a career in banking. So I joined Deutsche Bank in London right after I completed my MBA in 2002. It was right after the dot-com bubble burst. So I got an offer from Deutsche Bank, and they asked me to pick the location that I wanted to work in. And I grew up reading English literature. Always read voraciously. I'm glad that my kids do that too. But I'd never been to England, and that was the reason I picked London as the location. And I ended up staying in London for almost 10 years. And once I joined DB, I went through a rotation program where I rotated through different desks, and I ended up on a desk called rate structuring, which I absolutely wasn't planning on joining because I thought it was too nerdy for me. It was too geeky for me, and I felt that that was not the person that I was. But I did end up joining that desk. And it was a challenging time for me when I joined because it was my first job. I was on the trading floor. It was extremely aggressive, and I was learning, but I wasn't quite sure if I was doing the right thing. And my first performance review that I received wasn't that great. And having been a top student my entire life, I did struggle with that. And it was definitely challenging, not something I was used to. But I took it on as a challenge, as a project, and decided that I would figure out what needed to be done. And I did it. And I do think that it is inevitable that we all go through challenges and difficulties in our professional life and our personal life. And it is extremely important that we have the resilience to see that period through. And I love this quote by Winston Churchill. And when he said, success consists of going from failure to failure without a loss of enthusiasm. So I ended up spending 6 years in that nerdy, geeky desk. I built some great relationships, made friends that I'm still very close to and will be friends for life. And I enjoyed those times. I had a great experience. I learned a lot. But then I wanted change. I strongly believe that from time to time, change is good. It helps you keeps you motivated, helps you learn more, helps you learn about different things. And then I moved to the commodities business, which was a completely different business from the one I was involved in. And it was a very interesting challenge because I knew nothing about commodities, and I had to reshape the way the team worked. And everyone in the team knew way more than I did about the business, but it was extremely interesting as an experience, and we did manage to grow the business significantly over the next 3 years. And as part of that role, I made frequent trips to Asia from London, and 3 years later, an opportunity came up in Asia. And initially, I turned it down because despite my mantra for change, I felt it was too much change. I had a nice life in London, and I didn't want to get out of my comfort zone. I was eventually persuaded by my boss and my boss's boss. And even after I made the decision, I was filled with trepidation, and I did consider reneging more than once. And I remember I was on holiday with my sister in Mexico, and the last day of that holiday, I was very, very sad because I was supposed to move to Asia soon after that. And I honestly now cannot tell you how glad I am that I made that change. I made that decision to move. And that led to so many possibilities in my career and is absolutely instrumental to where I am today. And the point I'd like to make here is that sometimes it is much easier to continue with status quo, but it is extremely important to take the plunge and seize the opportunities as they arise. And now I am strongly of the opinion that one must embrace change because that's the only constant in life. And again, another quote which resonates with me is there are far better things ahead than any we leave behind. So I came to Asia, took on a bigger role. My 2 daughters were born within a 2-year gap. And in a way, it motivated me to do even more, to be a great role model for them. And early 2016, I felt like I had been in the global markets part of the business for a very long time. I had done different things, but I started thinking about what I wanted to do in the next phase of my career, the next 15, 20 years of my career. And that is when I got the opportunity to move to the private bank to run all products and solutions for Asia Pacific. And again, when I moved to private banking, it was a completely new business for me. It was really exciting and extremely intimidating. And I was very, very open with the people when I did not understand something, and I just asked them to explain it to me in detail. And I wasn't shy of asking even very basic questions because that was the only way I could learn and the only way I could actually contribute to the business. I did that for around 2.5 years. And in a tragic turn of events, my boss, who ran the business globally, passed away. And I was given his job to run products and solutions globally for the private bank. In fact, when I was informed that he had passed away and I was offered that job on a phone call, I didn't even react. I just cried. And I was left with the task of managing a group of my peers who were now my direct reports. And when we were collectively grieving the passing of someone we genuinely liked and admired. And we did manage to collectively make it a success, grew the business significantly. And having spent over 17 years in Deutsche Bank, I got a call from HSBC in early 2020. And that was a bigger role to run products and investments globally for the private bank and the retail bank, an area in which HSBC is a behemoth. Again, I took the plunge and joined HSBC in July 2020. And that was bang in the middle of COVID. And I was hired and onboarded virtually. And I came into an organization of 235,000 people, and I have a team of around 1,200 people. But I didn't have the opportunity to meet any of my stakeholders, my team, my peers, my direct reports, my boss, my various colleagues in person for about 15 months after I joined, as I could not travel due to the various COVID restrictions. And I'll be honest, when I resigned from Deutsche Bank, I was looking forward to my first ever break in my career. I had a break for about 3 months, and my original plan was to travel the world during my break. I was going to go to the West Coast in the US, to the East Coast to see my sister, and she had booked a family trip for us in Iceland. Then I was going to start work in London, spend a couple of weeks there, meeting the various stakeholders, and then finally start in Asia. And as the pandemic continued to rage, I didn't even step out of my condo during the leave, forget my travel the world plans. And the realization dawned on me that I was not going to be able to meet people in person once I started working. And initially that did upset me tremendously because I wasn't sure how I was actually going to do my job without meeting anyone in a completely new organization. But given the collective suffering that humanity had gone through, I felt so privileged that I didn't think I had a right to complain. So I made peace with it pretty soon. And the whole mindfulness concept of embrace change, as that's the only constant in life, stood me in good stead. And given there was no running into people at the cafeteria, at the water cooler, there were no informal introductions. So I was very organized and diligent and created a long list of people to meet and set up Zoom meetings with them. And my approach was that I needed to build relationships on Zoom calls. And in addition to business conversations, I asked people personal questions on these Zoom calls. I asked them about their interests, their upbringing, their families, etc., in an attempt to get to know them better, in an attempt to get to know them the way one would in person. And when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. And then I took on a bigger role in HSBC around 15 months after I joined, and I thoroughly enjoy my job. And it does give me a lot of purpose in my life. And speaking of purpose, I did want to bring it up because I think it's extremely important for everyone, for students, for teachers, for employees, for people who run organizations, to have purpose because of two main reasons. One is it's scientifically proven that individuals who identify a purpose in their job are far more productive and contribute more. So, frankly, the onus is also on organizations and managers to help employees find purpose in their jobs. And it doesn't matter what the job is, every single job does have a purpose that individuals can find. The second reason is quite simply happiness. In a book I read, the author defines happiness as purpose plus pleasure, as purpose is definitely an important contributor to one's well-being. And for me personally, I find purpose in many aspects of my life, in bringing up my kids, in inculcating the right values in them, in teaching them the right behaviors, and also in supporting the right causes in life. And I care deeply about education, particularly for girls and particularly for children. So I support that cause when I can. And I have responsibility for the careers and well-being of the 1,200 people in my team in various locations around the world. So I'm motivated by the challenge of creating an environment that allows people to bring their best selves to work in a supportive and inclusive environment. And in addition, it matters deeply to me that we do our best to leave the world a better place for our children. And two specific causes that I focus on are ESG and D&I, which is diversity and inclusion. From a professional standpoint, we set up the ESG Sustainable Investments Program in HSBC 2 years ago, which has been extremely successful. And I also try to do my best from a personal standpoint on the ESG front. And diversity and inclusion is a topic very close to my heart, and I spend a fair bit of time, particularly on gender diversity. And at work, I also find purpose in what I'm doing by thinking about how we add value to our clients, about how what we do helps change our clients' lives, and also by being a genuine and caring person towards my team and colleagues, and I derive a huge amount of value and purpose in just helping others and being empathetic, which I think is incredibly important. And that's a segue into discussing empathy, another value very close to my heart. And I'm going to mention a quote by a politician that I greatly admire, Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister of New Zealand. And this has nothing to do with my political leanings. She's just an individual I greatly admire. And when she announced her resignation, her shock resignation, I should say, recently, I think it was a few days ago, I did think that it took great courage for her to stop working or to resign at a time when she's doing extraordinarily well in many ways. And she said, and this is a quote by her, she said, "One of the criticisms I've faced over the years is that I'm not aggressive enough or assertive enough, or maybe somehow because I'm empathetic, I'm weak. I totally rebel against that. And I refuse to believe that you cannot be both compassionate and strong." So that was her quote. And I cannot tell you how much I relate to that quote. It totally resonates with me. And if I'm honest, for several years early on in my career, I struggled to take my empathetic side to work, as I felt compelled to show that I was strong. I was in an aggressive environment. I was given feedback that I needed to be aggressive. But over time, I realized that I was leaving behind one of my key character strengths by doing that. And now I do exactly the opposite. I know what my strengths are, and I take my whole self to work, which I think has helped me tremendously at work and in my career. And that is my value proposition. And I'm someone with a very strong work ethic, who's results focused, but also highly empathetic and caring towards people. And that is exactly what my colleagues see, and that's what my team sees. The point here is be authentic, be true to yourself, and identify your strengths and play to your strengths, because it's impossible to pretend to be someone you're not. And I'm going to end with one of my favorite quotes by Oscar Wilde, which is, "Be yourself because everyone else is already taken." So with that, I'm going to stop here and happy to take any questions.
start off like
Yeah, please.
so I think banking is an area where you would comparatively see more women compared to some of the other segments like say manufacturing or any of the other things, right? Like so how do you look at the the gender participation and women participation in, is it like really focused on some of the segments, or like how do you see this panning out, right?
So I would say not really to your original point, because maybe relative to manufacturing, maybe, but just about. And in fact, when I started in global markets, there were hardly any women. They were mostly, it was male dominated. IIT, that's where I came from, so it wasn't new to me, but it was an environment which was male dominated with very few
Maybe
women.
our role models are like ICSA, for example. Like
Exactly.
like
And I
already
have
part
to
of it.
say, in India, there are many, there have been multiple female CEOs, which is quite extraordinary. But in the global stage, Citi just appointed Jane Fraser recently, who's pretty much the only female CEO of a large major bank. So it is an area that is changing, though. It was not this way in the past, where it was very much male dominated. But I would say that over the last several years and couple of decades, there has definitely been a change.
But how is it like? What are some of the measures that are being taken to kind of increase women participation in women?
Yeah, I think at the entry level, it's still relatively equitable. It is more at the senior level where we need more role models, and that is where we don't see enough women. So both from a promotion and hiring standpoint, there are a lot of initiatives across the different banks, not necessarily quotas, because I don't think we should implement that, but there is just more of a focus in hiring senior women and promoting women across the board.
Hello, my name is Manoj. I just wanted to ask what your experience has been like balancing life and work over the course of your career.
Yeah, not easy, I must say. I think I've done it successfully, in my opinion, but it's not easy. It is, being a working parent, and taking care of kids and having a full-on job is challenging. But the way I do it is, I'm very organized. I have a long list of to-dos. I have my work to-dos and my home to-dos, and neither of them ever ends. They just get replaced by different things on the list. And sometimes my daughters say to me, Mama, you should put this on the work to-do, because this needs to get done during the week as opposed to the weekend. And I do that, and I manage it, I think, by being pretty organized and structured. But yes, it is a challenge. And also at certain points in time, I figure out my own schedule. I do a global rollout of Asia, which is challenging from a time zone standpoint. But the way I manage it is by ensuring that I do have a break where I get to see the kids and put them to bed and have dinner with them. And then I go back on Zoom calls after that.
Hello. My name is Anvit. So I wanted to ask, you worked for almost 18 years at Deutsche Bank, which is pretty amazing for like at one workplace. So I wanted to ask, like, what motivated you to work specifically in one sector in the asset structuring and wealth management for so long?
Sorry, what motivated me to leave
No,
Deutsche?
what motivated you to work for that long in Deutsche Bank in
Yeah,
one sector?
that's a good question. What motivated me was the fact that I did many different things. I did not work in the same part of the bank. I did not do the same role. It did help that I was growing in my career. So I, went on from a senior analyst all the way to managing director. So that did help, of course. But I think the main reason was I worked in different geographies, in different continents, across different businesses, completely different roles. And for me, learning is an extremely important factor in my career. And I felt that I continued to learn and I continued to contribute significantly. And these were the reasons I stayed. And then when I did get an interesting opportunity, I felt that it was time to move on.
Hello, ma'am. Hello, ma'am. I'm
Yes.
Shreya, really motivated by your speech.
Thank you.
So, my question for you is what do you think is the biggest challenge you have faced in your life?
Biggest challenge. Well, there have been multiple challenges I faced throughout my career, and I would say that it is, when you work in a large organization and you continue to grow, and there's always challenges, and there will be days when something doesn't go right. There will be days when something should have gone right and it just hasn't. There will be people that annoy you, and there will be people who you feel don't play by the right values, don't have the right values of integrity. And those are all times when it is extremely challenging. But that is when, for me, my whole personal growth and personal journey into mindfulness and meditation, which I've spent a fair bit of time on, has helped me significantly, because I tend to look at the bigger picture. And my personal rule for myself is, will this issue that is bothering me today affect me a year from now? And if the answer to that is no, then I try not to worry about it, because it's not a big deal. And if it does, then it probably is worth considering. And I tend to have no regrets, because in my view, there's no point thinking about the past. It's much better, it's much more useful, frankly, to be focused on the future and figure out, if there is an issue, what exactly we do about it. And I guess that's the engineering mindset, which is, if there's an issue, I immediately go into problem-solving mode, and I try to figure out what the solution is, as opposed to worry about the issue. Very different, I must say. And IIT was a place where, I genuinely had wonderful experiences. I think I probably shouldn't say this, but it was less about actual academics. It was much more about, making friends, building the relationships, having fun, frankly. And I was very involved in Sarang. I was very, very involved in the cultural activities. And so it was an experience which was absolutely wonderful. IIM was more serious. It was much more about, where do I get my internship, and where do I get, what do I want to do in terms of my career, where should I look for in terms of a job. So it was a very different experience, because, and if I were just to classify it, as IIT was more fun and IIM was more serious. And I can see Kaviraj nodding because he went through the exact same universities that I did.
Ma'am, I just put, away from the topic, I understand you have been at very senior levels at different banks. So I would be, in this fast-paced life where we are talking about results and at different quarters, maybe sometimes targets are monthly. So how are you intimidated by very close deals, and how are you dealing, how the corporate governance is taking a larger picture, when there are sometimes an MD or the people at the position, they like to take in a very good stand, a stand which is very lucrative, but on governance, there are a lot of issues, because I see a lot of things happening in the banking sector in India as of now.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question you ask, because when you think about corporates in the world, for a long period of time, corporates only cared about shareholder value. That was the only metric. How do we deliver value to our shareholders, because they invest in our company? But over the last decade or so, that has changed significantly, in that many corporates don't focus just on shareholders, but they focus on the various stakeholders, and that includes employees. Obviously, it includes shareholders. It includes the community. It includes the environment. It includes many, many different aspects of society in addition to just shareholders. And I personally think that is the right way to run a company, and not just focused on shareholders. Look, the business I run, of course I'm focused on results. One has to be, by definition, but we also do a lot of other things. We focus very much on ESG is an area, environmental, social governance. That's an area that we're very heavily involved in. And I helped set up the Sustainable Investments Program in HSBC a couple of years ago. And we help our clients invest sustainably, so we still enable them to grow their wealth, but at the same time, it is the right thing for the environment, for society, etc. And in addition to that, HSBC as an organization is also very involved in the various communities. So the way organizations are run has changed, is changing, and I do think 10 years from now we will be having a different conversation. Yes. To be honest, I thought a bigger percentage invested in the stock markets in India. At least they would have made a lot of money if they did over the last decade or so. I don't know the answer to that question, to be honest. I would have expected it to be a higher percentage in India. Perhaps it's a function of the wealth. I mean, if you look at GDP or per capita GDP, obviously America is at a very, very different level compared to India. So I would assume that as the GDP grows, as the country grows, I would think that that percentage would go up. Yes. The whole digital revolution, right? Everyone can invest online with a click of a button. Yes, absolutely.
Ma'am, you were pursuing aerospace engineering here. So what piqued your interest in banking, or when did you know that you want to go into banking?
See, I didn't know when I was in IIT that I wanted to go into banking. So I did enjoy aerospace engineering when I was here. But what I realized is that many of my classmates were far more passionate about aerospace engineering than I was. And many of them have still stayed in that field. I'm still in touch with them. In fact, I still meet them and speak to them. But I did realize that I wasn't as passionate. And this summer, we were in California on holiday, and I took the kids to Stanford, and it is a beautiful campus. And I did feel for a second, I wish I'd gone there because I had an admission. But the reason I decided not to go there was because I was not passionate about aerospace engineering. And then I wanted to go on and discover what I was passionate about because I didn't know it. And once I joined IIM Bangalore, when I did my internship with Lehman Brothers, that's when I discovered that I genuinely enjoyed finance. And it still has the whole mathematical angle, the engineering mindset definitely helped me then and has helped me throughout my career, as I said. But that's when I did realize that I really enjoyed finance and decided to go down that path.
How do you see the wealth management space emerging in the near future? And what are some key trends, especially in Indian projects?
I would say digitization is one key trend for sure, and especially for a certain wealth segment, that is definitely a key trend, and it has changed significantly over the last 10 years. It just didn't exist, whereas now, mutual funds and equities, etc., clients can trade all of that, very easily, as we were just discussing, and I expect that trend to continue. But having said that, in the ultra-high net worth segment, I still see a genuine need for human interaction, because when an ultra-high net worth client is covered by an organization, by a large bank, the bank meets many different needs of theirs, their investment needs, their business needs, and if they own a company, they want to do an IPO, they want to do an M&A, the bank provides them with advice. If they want to acquire, they want to invest in direct investments, again, the banks enables them and makes those connections. So I still see the value in the human connection, and I do see that remaining and continuing in the future as well.
Do you see a scope of technology disruption in the ultra high net worth space where you have been
there is a gap. I think the simpler products, definitely technology can fill that gap. And as an industry, we can do far better in terms of client reporting. We can do far better in terms of consolidation of assets, portfolio recommendation, and so forth. Again, all of those progress is being made in all of those fields. But I still think human interaction will continue. So there are gaps which will be filled over the next few years, but in addition, the human interaction will continue to remain paramount as well.
Ma'am, you mentioned that a large part of your career has been finding a purpose. So as careers sort of detach from the ground reality, like they become higher level. So what is your process in which you find that purpose?
See, I think at every level you can find a purpose, right? And I was reading a book, and I finished reading the book recently, where the book talks about this lady who works at a cancer center and how she totally changed the lives of people who were undergoing treatment there. She wasn't a social worker, she wasn't a nurse, she wasn't a doctor, she was the cleaner. And she found purpose in her life, and she improved the lives of every single cancer patient who came in there. And the reason I'm mentioning this story is to say that regardless of one's profession, regardless of the level at which one is operating, it is possible to find purpose. And for me, when I was directly working with clients and showing them products, etc., my purpose was this will help this organization grow the wealth. And as I've grown in my career, as I mentioned, ESG, the program that we've set up, it gives me great comfort that we are helping our clients grow their wealth, but at the same time, we're helping them do it in an environmentally friendly way where possible. And for me, enabling my team to have the best possible working environment also gives me purpose. So there are many ways in which one can find purpose, regardless of the organization, regardless of the industry, regardless of the career they've chosen, or the level at which they operate.
Ma'am, crypto has now been more than around us for a decade now. So how do you see crypto coming in the way of traditional banking?
That's an interesting question because everyone has an opinion on that. I can't say that I have a very strong opinion. I personally don't see crypto as the next big thing, right? I don't see that as completely disrupting markets and taking over traditional asset classes. Having said that, there are certain aspects of, say, blockchain, which have made changes in the world and which will continue to evolve and be extremely useful for many, many different purposes in the world. But I don't see crypto specifically, certain aspects, Bitcoin, for example, I don't see that as completely upending the world order as we know it.
Oh, why?
That is my personal view.
Oh, okay.
Not yet. It might in the future, but not today because there are a lot of issues that need to be worked through still.
Okay, and ma'am, for India, for the next decade, what do you think is the best asset class to invest in right now?
I'm not going to answer that question. I'm not close enough to India to answer that question.
So, maybe I'll take the last question because we're up on time. Or I don't know if there are others, but I have a question. Globally, practically in every country, wealth inequality has been rising at alarming levels in the last 2 decades. How will this game end, in your opinion?
That bothers me a lot too. Just seeing the inequality rise has bothered me a lot. But what gives me comfort is that things are changing in many other ways too. Just the number of people who have risen above the poverty line and the number of people who are moving from, say, lower middle class to middle class and so forth does give me comfort. And I forget the name of the book. There was a book I read which was predominantly on statistics, which speaks exactly about this, which is the extent to which the world, if you look at it from a pure statistical standpoint in terms of hunger, in terms of the poverty index, and things like that, how the world today is a better place than it was 50 years ago. Freakonomics, there was another one, I forget, the name will come to me, which was all based on statistics. So that gives me comfort. And yes, the inequality does bother me tremendously. But I think, as I said, that's what gives me comfort. And if we look at the next 1 or 2 decades, I don't expect inequality to suddenly disappear. I do not. But I do expect the lives of more people to get better. And I do hope that factfulness, exactly, factfulness. I was looking for the name, yes.
Ma'am, what would you recommend for someone who wants to build a career in this segment, in investment management? And what is is there something you wished you had known earlier in your career?
I don't think so, to be honest. What recommendation would I give? I think, just pursue that path. You want to do finance, study finance, and apply for the companies, and that wherever you're studying. And I do think, honestly, at the end of the day, hard work matters tremendously. Resilience matters. Just sticking to something, perseverance, and everyone will go through challenging times, but coming out of that and continuing and not giving up is extremely important. And nothing specific, I would say definitely study finance if that's the area you want to be in, and then that will create a natural path towards the industry.
Thank you, ma'am.
Had just another question. Should I go now? Yeah. No, just wanted to understand, how do you end up identifying if a particular organization or a trading desk or a particular boss aligns with the values you hold dear? Was that something you thought about explicitly before moving to Asia, before taking on a new role in the same organization?
The way I think about it is, I think it is important to think about organizations before you move. It is very difficult to think about bosses. And the reason I say that is the value of an organization is important. The brand of the organization is important. The ambition of an organization is important. And these are all the reasons I joined HSBC. Bosses will come and go. And I wouldn't make a decision on the basis of that. It is also important not to join an organization just because of one individual. I've known people who go join an organization and that individual leaves. It's happened to me twice. I was hired in different roles by someone and that individual left within a few months. So if I were there just because of that individual, that would just have been a wrong decision. But I do believe strongly that if everything else is aligned, the organization is aligned, the values are aligned, etc., then you will find your way. I found my way even after the people who hired me left. But I do think that one should not move for the sake of an individual, but for the sake of the broader organization.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lavanya. I think that was a fantastic session, and like a movie flashback. What I was thinking was that 23 years back in Professor Nandini Iyengar's class in Life and Literature, you standing there and reading out the book review, and of course, then as we got admissions to IMB and see that meeting at Besant Nagar Beach with the IMB seniors before we actually took the decision, and all that she spoke about, right, in terms of resilience, empathy, planning, structured approach to life, focus, all of that, I can totally vouch that you're a person who knows what you want from life, and you actually go for that, right? So it is an absolute honor and pleasure for all of us to listen to you and the insights that you shared with the students, and that's the advantage of being part of the IMB's IITM student community also, right? I mean, they get opportunities to listen to a lot of experts in their respective field. I now request Professor Mahesh, Dean, Alumni and Corporate Relations, to present Lavanya with a small memento and goodie bag. So please. So maybe